Hi, my name is Mike Dillard, and this is Self-Made Man, the podcast for men who want to leave their mark on the world and create a legacy of honor, integrity, and achievement in every aspect of their lives. I'm glad you're here, and once again, it is time to forge your destiny. Today is one of those amazing and rare opportunities to speak to the founder of one of the fastest growing startups in the world and to find out how they did it. Our guest today is named Michael Wystrach, and he is the man behind Freshly.com. So for those of you who haven't come across Freshly yet, well, it sprouted into existence after Michael's career in the investment banking world had started to take its toll on his health. He knew that he had to lose weight and that taking control of his diet was the key, but he ran into the problem that most of us do. Unless you have a personal chef, it's super expensive and it's super time-consuming to eat 3 healthy meals a day. So a solution was required, and Freshly.com was born. The concept is very simple. Prepare great tasting, healthy, pre-prepared meals made with all natural and organic ingredients and offer them at a price that everybody can afford. And what started in his home kitchen has taken off like a freaking rocket. In less than a year, they're on track to deliver over 180,000 meals per month. So today, you get to hear the inside story of how he did it, and I can tell you right now that this is one of the most value-packed shows that we have ever had on Self-Made Man. So if you want the inside scoop on what it takes to scale your idea into a monster, this is your episode. So please help me welcome the founder of Freshly.com, Michael Wystrach. Welcome back, everybody. Mike Dillard here, and today we are joined by the founder of one of the hottest startups in the food industry. The company is called Freshly.com, and we're here today with Michael Wystrach. So, Michael, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me on.
I have to say, I've really been looking forward to this interview. I appreciate you making time for this because I know in your position and how fast you guys are growing, you're probably, running around with your hair on fire. So I have to say, thank you so much for taking the time. And, if you could, let's start by diving into your story, because if I've done my homework correctly, you actually come from a background in investment banking. And so is this your first startup for you personally, or the first business that you've ever begun?
Yeah, so let's, I guess I can go back a little further. So I was born and raised in a restaurant family. So my parents, I was born and raised on a ranch in a restaurant family. So my parents bought our first restaurant a month after I was born. So I grew up doing every position imaginable you can do in a steak restaurant. And then we also had a cattle ranch. So I saw both ends. But so after college, I went to work on a sales and trading desk at an investment bank called Thomas Weisel Partners in New York. It was kind of a lifelong passion of mine to work on Wall Street. And so I started there and did that for a few years and had a ton of fun. And kind of in the process of that, realized that both my parents are entrepreneurs, and we've had a ton of businesses. And I kind of grew up in an entrepreneurial family where my parents, my dad's previous corporate job was the United States Marine Corps, so that was his last job. And then when he got out of there, he was entrepreneurial from that day on. So did the 2-year stint, and I realized like I'd had a passion for doing my own thing. So I transitioned out of the investment banking background about 2 years after doing it.
So what inspired that? I mean, that's a big move. Was it dissatisfaction with what you were doing? Was it too stressful? Just not inspirational enough for you?
No, I loved the hard work. I loved the energy. I loved the passion in there. I think that the frustration I had was corporate America as kind of the bureaucracy, the slow moving. Even your fastest moving corporation moves pretty slow. And I found myself really frustrated. And I think there's, coming from an entrepreneurial background as I did, I really, if I saw a problem, I wanted to solve it right away. And those of you who work in corporate America know that that's not usually sometimes the most well-received process when you have a young kid trying to solve all the company's problems. So it was a great time, and it was I really loved my bosses. I learned a ton, but I had this opportunity. My dad really wanted me to come back and work with the family business and kind of help get a lot of the different businesses. At that time, they had 4 gas stations, a hotel, 2 different restaurants, multiple real estate developments. And so he was trying to get me to come back and help them kind of get things organized. So it seemed like a right time for me to make that move back into kind of, I'd say, the small business realm. But it was a great experience, which gave me a ton of education that I've used since then.
So when did the idea for Freshly come about? Was this kind of already in your head when you were still in banking, or did you leave that world and you're thinking of what to do, and how did this pop into your head?
Yeah, so I think they always say the best companies are built out of a desire for the product, and Freshly was truly that. So I finished an investment banking stint. I was living in New York, eating takeout nonstop. I was the most unhealthy I've ever been. I was weighing in over 200 pounds, and I've always been like a comfortable 175. And I didn't feel healthy. So when I went back to Arizona, I started hitting the gym really hard. But I was finding I just wasn't getting the same results I used to get in the gym. Kind of, hitting 30, I just all of a sudden found that my body wasn't responding to the gym the way it used to. And I had good family.
I know how that. I know it's horrible. It sucks so bad.
It's sad when all of a sudden, I was so used to like just being able to go in and eat whatever I want. So I had this problem in that, like, I hate cooking for myself. I'm just not passionate about cooking. It's just not a hobby of mine that I enjoy. And I was so used to like New York of having just takeout all the time. I had a good family friend who was a doctor who just telling me, Mike, it's 80% of your results are going to come from what you're eating, not the gym. And I kind of, I kind of was baloney, it's calorie in, calorie out. I just got to work out more. So finally, after many failed weeks of seeing no results, I said, fine. I kind of came up with a perfect solution for me, which was to leave me out of the solution. So I said, okay, you draw me up a meal plan. I'm going to give it to my chefs and they'll cook it. We had a restaurant at the time. So I gave it to the chefs. They kind of took his ingredient list and they made different meals, and it was real haphazardly done. I took a bunch of to-go containers and put it in my fridge, and fast forward 60 days, I'm in the best shape I've been in since high school. I feel great. I haven't counted a calorie the entire time. I'm eating a ton of food. I have the best energy. And people saw the results and started asking me if I could do it for them. And, coming from that entrepreneurial background, I immediately, the light went off and I said, wow, like, it's rare when you have a business that kind of self-markets itself. And the demand was so strong that was the invention of Freshly, was really people coming to me and saying, like, I want this solution as well. And that's how we started. So I really, starting it, I was just trying to solve my own problem, which was that I wanted to eat healthy, convenient food. I needed it to be quick. I didn't want to do any of the work, so I didn't want to learn what healthy should be. I didn't want to cook the food, and this was a solution I put together for myself, and it's the solution we've solved for so many people, which is, how do you eat healthy, on the go, convenient food that tastes great, that doesn't feel like you're starving yourself.
So looking at the business, this is a huge undertaking and a brand new industry for you. I mean, obviously, again, you grew up with your parents around restaurants and food prep. So that's a little bit of an advantage. But at the same time, you've just got to look at this and say, okay, how do we do this at scale? And this is a brand new world for you. Where did you start?
Well, so I think I listened to a bunch of your podcasts, and I think like all businesses have to start with a mental vision of where you want to be. And I think you have to dream really, really big. So I think when it started working and we decided we were going to do a food service, direct to people's stores, we thought huge, and we thought we were going to be the next Amazon. I think we still think that. And I think that that's the first thing I would say to anyone starting a business, is that, where you're going to go is first and foremost going to be limited by yourself and what you think. And if any good idea starts with a thought. And I think, so for us personally, we had a restaurant at the time, so we started there. We started very bootleg. We didn't have a lot of capital, so we did all of the positions, and we figured it out as we went. And we partnered with gyms at the time. Our first delivery process was we partnered with gyms, knowing that gyms had the same problem, is that they wanted people to eat healthy, and it was hard to get people to eat healthy, and the results would be better. So we partnered with them. We put refrigerators in their gyms, and we dropped food off there, and then people picked up the food. And we did everything. Me and my co-founder and a few others, we got up at 4 a.m. We cooked. We then went and delivered. We then came home and handled customer service issues and kind of did that repeatedly. And that was great because it really got you to understand all pieces of the puzzle. And then we quickly outgrew the restaurant. We took over a large production facility in Phoenix, Arizona. And I remember that amazing because when we moved into that production facility with a 10,000 square foot big commissary kitchen, we thought we'll never fill this thing up. We'll never get to, this thing is huge. And we had a landlord that took a big risk on us because I think at the time we had $5,000-6,000 in the bank and the lease was $6,000 a month. So we stretched pretty far on that and we got that kind of humming. And that really, when we moved to Phoenix, we started doing our own delivery direct to people's doors. So we started using refrigerated boxes. And I kind of knew that the big way for us to scale was going to be to somehow figure out how to get FedEx to ship our packs and make it make sense. And we started that. And that's really what helped explode the business was when we kind of handed off that logistics portion and let FedEx deliver the meals direct to your door.
And I love to ask questions like this just to show people how this is all about problem solving, which you've just been describing. But okay, you need to figure out how to partner up with FedEx on this. What does that actually look like? Did you literally just kind of Google FedEx, your local, distributor and call them up and ask for a sales rep? Like, what does that actually look like?
Yeah, most everything starts with a cold call. When you're starting off, I'd say on everything we did, from vendors to anything, you're calling people up and you're trying to get anyone who can to take a meeting. You're asking anyone who ships FedEx if they can make an introduction. So FedEx just worked. We called and we called and we called and we finally got someone, and then we got a local rep, and then we finally got a local rep to take us serious, and then a local rep came out, and we really worked with FedEx to kind of explain the process to us. We didn't know what dim weight was. So those of you who don't use FedEx, it's dimensional weight. So if you ship kind of a big box that the dimensions are bigger than the weight, you actually pay dim weight. So we had so many challenges and questions, and then we had to figure out our first styrofoam boxes that we bought were $40, and we were trying to ship a box to your house that was going to cost you no more than $65. So you can see the economics don't work very well there.
Right.
So we tracked down friends of friends of friends who were buying styrofoam in Canada, and we had them make an introduction. And we finally got a Canadian person to help us, a big Canadian company to help us buy styrofoam. So we went from $40 to $8 per box in styrofoam. And that was like a huge, huge win for us on the ability of making that work. But I think the fun thing it's been for us is we've had a few vendors who didn't need to and probably shouldn't have taken us seriously when they did. We had a company called Robert Reiser who does a lot of the machinery for food. And I remember the sales rep, Matt, came and we weren't even shipping food out of our new facility yet. And he came and he literally for the next year coached me and my co-founder on different things. And to this day, we still use Matt. Matt's grown our account we bought our first machine with Matt, which was $35,000. They really working with us. They financed it by themselves. I think the interest rate they gave us was 6%, no money down. The unheard of terms you get for a startup. And I think last year we spent over $1 million with Matt and Robert Reiser. So we've tried to, really pay back those early connections that got us to where we are.
Have you had a mentor or a coach along the way that's been guiding you?
Yeah, I'd say a lot. So, one of the things that we did is I think there's two ways to grow a company. And I know that your model has been kind of the cash flow bootstrapping it. We started that way and then we've raised additional money. And I think one of the things that's great about raising outsider money is first and foremost, it helps you as a founder kind of deleverage a little in that like as a founder, you take so much risk just with quitting your job and doing this company. And sometimes you take on more debt and leases and stuff like that. And you kind of really leverage yourself up. And that pressure and can be a lot. So we chose a path of raising money through outsiders. And I think the one amazing thing outside of getting capital that does for you is it brings on people who have a very vested interest in you succeeding. we brought on our first institutional with a company called Brand Project out of Toronto. Literally, I read an article about them in TechCrunch. They had an office in Toronto, an office in New York. I cold called the person in New York and I said, hey, look, don't respond to this in any way. I just want your address. I'm going to ship you some food. If you like the food, let's talk. If you don't like the food, then no harm, no foul. So he sent him some food. He said, wow, this is amazing. He got his team out of Toronto. They flew out probably about a month, 2 months later, they invested. Andrew Black, who's the founder of that, was one of the founders and the CEO of Virgin Mobile Canada, which was bought out by Bell for, I think, like $500 million. So he had a huge exit there and decided that he really wanted to start investing in startups. And so Andrew was our first mentor, and Brand Project was, what I'd say, our very first mentor, and worked with us kind of a little bit like an incubator and took us to that next level. I think, one of the hard things is when you're growing up in Phoenix or you're growing a company in Phoenix is you don't kind of have that startup environment, which really helps you kind of understand kind of how startups should see the world. And I think they brought a lot of that to us.
What were some of the biggest lessons learned from working with them?
I think there's general tools that startups and VCs and things are going to always look at, and their terminologies as far as customer acquisition cost, lifetime value, lifetime value to customer acquisition cost, cohort analysis. We're a subscription model, so cohort analysis is big. Really investing in branding and brand positioning, which is, I think, one of the things they taught us is step back a little from the day to day and look at this big picture and where do you not only see yourself today, but where do you see yourself in 5 years, and how do we want to position the brand to be there? Helping building a team and really filling out an org chart, helping positioning. For us, we're in an industry where it's fairly capital intensive. Positioning for an additional round of financing was some things that they brought really quickly to the table.
So you guys have been growing very rapidly. Share some details of that if you could, and then I would love to dive into some of the biggest challenges that have come along with that.
Yeah, so let's see. Here's some metrics. So we beginning of last year, we were 15 employees. We're now over 140 employees. We moved our headquarters last May to New York. We started with 2 of us. We're now over 35 here in New York.
Let me stop you there. Let me stop you there real quick. Why New York? I mean, that's an expensive place to move a startup, right?
It is. So there's a few reasons. One, again, I think for us and this is kind of where I started is where do you see yourself? And I think we see ourselves especially as going to be a leader in this industry, a leader in the food industry, and making a huge national presence, but also an international presence eventually. We raised our Series A financing with a firm called Highland Capital Partners. Highland is based out of Boston. Our board member, Bob Davis, who's just unreal. Bob was the founder and CEO of Lycos. I think the fastest growing startup in history, sold for, I want to say $12 billion to Terra Lycos. And now Bob's a venture capitalist with Highland. So when Bob fell in love with the model, he said, hey, look, I'll invest in you guys wherever you're at. I can tell you that there's not a lot I can do for you in Phoenix. If you're in New York, if you're out on this end, I can do a lot for you. So it kind of aligned. It was probably quicker than we would have wanted to move. We're in the process of opening an East Coast facility. So we knew that the East Coast was ultimately going to be a bigger market for us. It was probably 6 months, 8 months quicker than we wanted to. But again, this was kind of the jump of not necessarily where do you want to be today, but where do you want to be in 5 years? And we knew this was going to be our headquarters.
So you've 10x'd basically your employee base in a year. And what has that done, for you guys from a customer acquisition standpoint? How many meals are you shipping a month now?
Well, I guess this month we're going to ship about 180,000 meals this month. We've grown. I mean, to give that in perspective, in January, we shipped, I think, 10,000 meals. So just a huge amount of growth. I mean, we basically had to, in last September, we hit capacity at 10,000 square foot facility. We thought we would never fill up. We're actually over capacity. So this January, we moved into a 60,000 square foot facility. We brought that fully online in March. And that's allowed us to really, really expand and continue and grow in that. So we've been growing on average 25, 30% month on month. And that's really just as quickly as we can grow capacity. It hasn't, most of our weeks we're shutting off because we're just incrementally growing capacity anywhere from 4 to 7% per week.
So how in the world are you guys acquiring customers at that rapid of a pace?
Yeah, so I think the old saying is definitely true, is that, for us, we're a subscription model. So it really comes down to you've got to love the product. So it all starts with the product. Your best acquisition tool is always going to be the product. Over time, it's especially on a subscription model, if the product doesn't meet people's expectations or people don't like it, they're not going to come back. So still to this day, a majority of our new customers come in through referrals, a large majority. And then right now we use a lot of online marketing. So we'll use a lot of Facebook, some Instagram, a little Pinterest, a lot of Google content marketing, a lot of those kind of different avenues that we'll use, retargeting, all those different things.
Is there a marketing campaign that you have run over the last year that you're like, man, that worked really, really well, that you'd be willing to share?
Yeah, I mean, I think empowering our user base, I think what we did was when we empowered our user base, a really smooth, easy referral program. And our referral programs has been powered by a company called Extol. It was an expensive investment. For us, it was a very expensive investment for technology.
How do you spell their name?
Extole, Extol.
Got it. And so they have a software platform designed for essentially referral and viral marketing campaigns?
Exactly. So it's a built-in platform which really helps you empower your user base to refer the product and rewards them. You can set it up any way you want. I think that was a big thing for us, is that we had such strong word of mouth that when we gave this extra, like a medium, a tool that was just meant for that and really helped it make it easier for someone to refer, now it's probably been one of our largest needle movers.
And what are people rewarded with when they do make a referral?
So 2 free meals. If you refer a friend, you get 2 free meals. And what we found with and I'm sure it's the same as your product and what you're doing, is that you find that people love the product. So they're going to share it anyways, and they're going to tell their friends, and probably already are telling their friends. And normally that's over a conversation. That's someone saying, hey, you've got to listen to this podcast. It's an amazing podcast. And then, the problem with that is that if someone tells me at the gym, hey, Mike, listen to this podcast, I've got to remember to download, Self-Made Man, and then to add that. And every time, that just, a lot of people forget. I being probably the number one forget. So, building in a tool which is all digital, which links you right in and says, hey, Mike, listen to this podcast. And then it clicks directly to download the podcast. And it just makes that a lot more seamless. And then giving someone a little reward for that always makes it a little nicer for that person.
So one of the challenges that I'm having right now at the moment for my hydroponics business is deciding which technology platforms to go with, maybe Salesforce or Magento or something like that, which, are Fortune 500 level platforms. So you're not going to outgrow it, but it's definitely a monster from a cost and tech perspective to implement. What did you guys use for Freshly, and how did you go about making that choice when you had to make it? You're probably in a bootstrapped, mode still, money counts. And that's a big decision, because the switching cost of choosing wrong or having to change platforms down the road, especially when you're going through some rapid growth, is just a giant project.
I think the problem with technology is it's the same as like office space, right? So we deal with that problem in office space. It's like, okay, we only need today 4,000 square feet, but we're going to need 10,000. And in New York, you got to sign a big long-term lease. So you're dealt with this, like, we don't really need it today, but we may need it in the future. So I think that the fun thing, and the thing I would always recommend, and I think every book I've read on, lean startup probably being the best, is like MVP, MVP, MVP. I think one of the things entrepreneurs do too much is they think about like being $1 billion business, and being $1 billion business or $100 million business. You definitely want to be thinking about that, and you want to be thinking that you're going to be there, and you don't want to have a doubt, but you also don't want to build the company today for that $100 million company or that $1 billion company. So what we did is we went with a WordPress stack And before that, when I first started the company, I did Shopify. And I think Shopify actually, if you have, it really depends on the customization of your hydroponics. So if your product is like one product with minimal customization needed, then I think that's those off the shelf Shopify and those, they work amazing. The plugins are quick, they're easy. You're paying, $8 a month for the service, and it's going to scale really rapidly with you. Now, so we started with a company called, we had a lot more customization. So we started with Woocommerce, which is on the WordPress stack, and it worked well. Now we broke that thing like it's like I mean by the end it was such a disaster that the thing was just every week it was like engineers up all night just trying to fix this. It was like a duct tape, a house held up by duct tape. But we just recently, middle of April, switched to our own custom built platform. And it's an entirely custom built platform. It runs all the way from our CX, which is, our CRM, all the way through to the facility. So it runs an ERP, it runs all these different systems. It's highly integrated. There's not a single line of borrowed code. It's over, close to 1 million lines of code. It took us 6 months to build. There's no way we would have been able to build that had we not learned all the things about the business. And businesses, like anything, are very evolving. And what you think today ends up not being really true in 6 months. And I think for us, operating for a year with WooCommerce, while it was frustrating a lot of the times, allowed us to build the system that we had today. So, I mean, my recommendation to you would be, first and foremost, because we looked at Magento, we almost build on the Salesforce stack. I would look a little more towards the downline and just see if those can work, because you can have beautiful looking sites, fully like all the things you want, with tons of places to put video and interactive stuff just on Shopify or any of those. So I'd say at least look at those.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a huge decision from a tech perspective. Did that come as a result of bringing on some rock stars, into the tech department, maybe a particular CTO who had a vision for that level of platform and the reasons for the customization? And if so, how did you find those people? Did you reach a standpoint where you're getting enough growth and enough PR to where the talent is coming to you, or did you have to go out and search them out?
Yeah, so I could say for us is that, they call it plain pasture level. For talent, you should always be reaching. So at least in my opinion, and so at every level of every talent, from our CTO to our director of facilities, we've always reached. So when they joined us, it was not a smart decision with our CTOs, our director. They took a big risk on us. They were highly established in their careers. They were highly established. Our CTO has a PhD from Columbia in machine learning. He's had multiple startups with successful exits. He was running a very successful startup with a big vesting coming. I pitched him for 3 to 4 months straight. Probably once every 2 weeks, I'd go take him out to drinks and pitch him. And in the end, he believed in the vision. He believed in what we were doing. And I think that's really important for founding team. Like those first few hires, hired guns are great, but you really, really want to get people who are bought into the vision, who are going to help. And that's what we did. And certainly, there's certain steps which deleverage their decisions a little. So when we raised our Series A from Highland, that was kind of the thing that allowed him to tell his wife he was going to make the move. Prior to that, he may have gotten too much trouble.
So, I'm interested in knowing the thoughts that are going through your head when you're going after these types of people. How has this process forced you to grow personally?
I think the biggest thing for me is, and I've always been a big fan of self-improvement and constantly very looking inward and saying like, okay, what does the position require from me today? And I think when you're part of a startup and that startup's growing quickly, you have to grow really quickly because my position as a CEO changed from, I was our first delivery driver, I was our first cook. And at a certain stage, my transition has been that I'm really the vocal piece of Freshly. So I'm out there, I'm speaking with you. I'm really making sure that our message is understood. I'm meeting with different companies for business development and stuff like that. And I'm hiring. So it's always being hiring. So I'm always out there. And I think that evolution has been something I've really had to train myself on. And I've never had a hard time necessarily speaking with people or showing the story, but I've realized that that's much more of what I have to do now. And it means that, sometimes I'm not able to get in the weeds as much as I'd like to these days, but hiring people who can really take the company to the next levels is kind of my number one focus now.
What have you learned from that process, and how do you go about hiring? Because I would say it's more of an art than a science. And that's an area that I definitely do not have a lot of experience in. And it's something that, I don't know if you heard the episode that we did with Josh Bizzoni on the show, but that was really the secret to their growth as well for BioTrust. And, $100 million business. And it was all a very strategic hiring plan, for him over the course of their first year. So if you could describe your methodology and kind of lessons learned from that, that'd be amazing.
I think always working from an org chart and looking at your team's weaknesses. So, in any company, you're going to have kind of an operational person that you could call the COO. You're going to have a marketing person. You're going to have a technology person. You're going to have, at some point, someone to make sure that you're handling the hiring process really well. And I think, the key for a good CEO is to hire to your weaknesses. Don't hire to your strengths. So you come from a marketing background. So you don't. That should probably be your last hire, right? Because you understand how to market. You've been doing it for so long. But like you said, you have a hard time hiring. You haven't done it. So that's maybe the first person you'd want to bring them on early and, give them a great stock package so that they're really vested and bought in. And not that you are going to be able to wash your hands and not do any more hiring, but now you have someone in who can help you on that spot. I think that's the successful things we've done is we've taken kind of core competencies of me and my co-founder, what we do really, really well and what we didn't do really well. And I think we went out and we searched for those core competencies around what we didn't do very well. And then I'd say the best advice on hiring people is one, reach really far. So reach someone that you think there's no chance you'd ever get. Go at that person and continuously go after them. And the second thing is I guess a little maybe almost counter to what I just said is the most important thing is that this person is going to bleed for the company. In the early days, is you need someone who is going to live and die for that company, and who's going to be on the phone at Saturday at 10 p.m. and then be right back on the phone Sunday at 6 a.m. and making sure that there's no problems. So I think those kind of people, they set the foundations of the company. And when you're a fast growing company, having those people early sets kind of all the other hires see that.
Do you have a particular methodology that you subscribe to or learned maybe, what is it, top grading, or is there a book you read, but is there a hiring process or methodology that you are a fan of?
So I read Top Grading. I love the process. I think the first thing is, I would say this for almost anything within a startup, and hiring definitely is set up a process. And I think starting with a book like Top Grading or there's a bunch of other ones out there. And you don't have to use it exactly, but you can set up the process. I think the other thing we're always trying to do is get data points. So we do on everyone director level and above, we do what we call a DISC score, which I don't know what DISC stands for. It's not what we call it. It's called a DISC test. It's basically a personality test. Mm-hmm. And that lets us kind of like sit down. We don't use those. We use them, but we don't necessarily, because we're a little early now, we don't rest our hiring decision on whether your DISC profile matches what we thought. But we look back a lot and we're like, this is funny. This is interesting. Like, we look at our DISC profiles a lot, and we go back in the hiring process and we compare those and we say, like, what are we good at? What are we bad at? So we can start understanding personalities, and personalities are going to fit roles. We try to do a much better job, at least recently, of really taking the time to draw out the job description. I think a job description is like a business plan, right? Writing out the business plan doesn't necessarily mean you're creating a good business, but not writing out a business plan means that you maybe haven't thought out exactly what you're trying to do with the business. And I think doing a great job description, and I'm not just talking about a job description that you're going to list online. I'm talking about like, what are their KPIs? How are their KPIs going to be measured? Who's the manager who's going to measure those KPIs? When are they getting reviewed? Are there any dotted lines? So this person may answer to me, but they may also co-answer to this person. What are the expectations? What is this 30, 60, 90? A lot of times we'll have someone they're coming in and we'll have them, after giving them the job description, we'll have them present to us a 30, 60, 90-day plan. And that kind of lets us understand the expectations that that person's coming in and what they can reach.
What do you look for in a prospective hire when it comes to a culture match?
This is the hard thing, is that when you're a startup and you don't really have a culture, it's hard to define the culture. I mean, the culture, largely when you're, a charismatic CEO, the culture starts with you, or, charismatic co-founders, whatever that. So the culture is your personality. And then over time, you bring in more people, and the company kind of gets its own culture. So one of the things we're actually working on right now is, and I think Amazon's done an amazing job of core values, and like, what are the core values of the company, and starting with the core values. And then every interview is based around those core values. Because what you realize is, at least for us, we've realized is that if you don't have the same cultural fit as Freshly, doesn't mean you're a good person or a bad person. It just means that you may not fit in with us. And we've realized that, like, when interviewing people, it's not necessarily saying, hey, you're a bad candidate. It's just saying, hey, this may not be the best place for you to work, and doing it better. And that a lot of times the tough thing comes on the company to first and foremost identify what are their core values, because it's difficult to hire against core values if you don't have them written down and everyone bought in and understanding those. I think, we've taken, Amazon does a great job of this. It's like, if you're getting written up in Amazon, they're writing you up against one of the core values. So it's everything is based around their core values. And like, your infraction would be based on, you didn't follow core value number 10, XYZ. We have a lot of room to work on that. We're making a big effort this next 4 to 5 months to really improve that process.
What are some of the key values that you guys have brought to Freshly?
I think the first and foremost thing, and it's our number one core value, is mission driven. So we believe in what we're doing. We believe that, we fundamentally believe that, and I know I think you believe this as you said with your hydroponic, is that the food system's kind of crazy and it's messed up. And it's messed up that we, for so long, like, we don't trust food companies. We're led to believe that you can't trust any food companies. It's just a messed up idea when you think, like, food is the biggest medicine we put into our body every day. It's the most response. It can do the most for people. And we really fundamentally believe that there's a push and there's going to be a huge movement. And we're part of the front runners of this movement of making food companies some of the most honored, like, respected companies out there. And that people really want food companies to stand for integrity. That's our number one thing. So we think we can make a huge, meaningful impact on the world. We think that 60% of Americans are overweight. 1/3 of Americans are going to be obese by 2030. The largest cost increase to healthcare is obesity related. Type 2 diabetes is the fastest growing disease in America. And we truly believe we're going to be part in fixing that. And I think, our number one thing is you got to believe that. And if you don't believe Freshly can be part of that movement, then you probably can't work here from the day one, because passion is what gets us all to come in here and work every single day. And I think we want people to really be excited to come to work. We don't want them to have to go to work because they're getting a paycheck. We want them to be excited. And that's the first thing we bring, I think. And that's probably been the number one most meaningful thing we've brought.
So what is your philosophy and what is your commitment to your food, specifically the ingredients, right? Because you can go to your local grocery store, buy, fresh ingredients from the produce section, but, you don't know what they've gone through from a pesticides perspective or processing perspective. So it's really interesting these days. It's like you just said, it's very hard to trust your food unless you know where it's coming from, because, the manufacturing process and, the ag industry these days, there's just landmines everywhere from a pesticide and a chemical perspective.
Yeah. So we're 100% all natural, 100% gluten-free, no additives, no preservatives, no hormones, no antibiotics. We use organic when possible. We walk this kind of fine line that We'd love to be organic all the time, but we find that we can't get consistent supply, and also it becomes cost prohibitive for a lot of our the amount we'd have to charge for the end product gets difficult. We use no processed sugars and no processed carbohydrates. So it's what we call sustainable paleo. So it's very much based around the paleo diet. Sustainable in that we introduce things like cheese, we introduce things like quinoa, different products like that technically don't follow under the paleo, but make the diet a little easier for people to follow. And we're also starting to introduce some vegetarian options and different things along those lines.
So one of the interesting parts about y'all's model is the pricing that you have, which is, in my mind, I don't know how you do it, because what is it, around $11 a meal on average with free shipping?
Yep.
How in the world do you guys pull that off? Because I mean, that's an amazing value. So I'm curious.
It's a combination of a lot of, it's like death by 1,000 cuts, victory by 1,000, wins. And it's really, I think, one, our business model allows for that. We've built a highly technical business model, which basically allows us to do huge amounts of volume of food in a very efficient manner, where we're literally taking raw ingredients and 12 hours later, they're getting shipped out the door. And we're talking, tens of thousands of meals that we're doing on a given day. And the quality and consistency is extremely high. And it's just this process that's empowered by technology, breaking all these things down into core ingredients. And then from there, it's the foundation of great partnerships. So it's being able to get FedEx and those things in great partnerships. It's innovating on packaging and solutions around. We were really excited last February, we got rid of styrofoam. We were desperately looking for a solution which would keep our boxes refrigerated for as long as we need them refrigerated for, but wasn't styrofoam. And we ended up finding a provider in Phoenix, actually, who does recycled denim. So it's 100% biodegradable product. It's actually recycled denim jeans. Our value is higher than styrofoam. You don't have any of those kind of negative impacts. So I think and with us, the scale continues to make the product more and more affordable. And I think the exciting thing on Freshly is that while other kind of ready-made meal business models have continued to rise their prices or increase their prices and start charging shipping and delivery and all these things, we've kept our price 100% flat. And we hope in the next few months to actually start lowering the price.
Oh, that's absolutely amazing. So this has been awesome, Michael. This is definitely one of my favorite interviews that we've ever done. I think just the value that you've delivered through all of your experiences over the last 2 years growing this business is just amazing. Where can people go to sign up and get some meals from Freshly?
Yeah, go to www.freshly.com. We're in 28 states, so we cover most of America besides the Northeast and the Southeast. So we apologize about that, but try us out. And if we're not in your area, submit your email and we'll let you know when we are in your area. And we hope to be national here end of this year, beginning part of next year.
Very good. Very good. And I'm going to end with one last question for you. What do you need help with most right now, whether that's in a personal perspective or business perspective?
So I'd say from a business perspective, hiring. So we're always looking for amazing candidates. If you're interested, you can email us or just go on our line and submit a contact. We'll happily take any resume out there. I think that's the biggest thing we're doing now. We'll probably double our size in the next 4 to 5 months. So we're hiring. I think from a personal aspect, and I think I'm sure you can relate with this, is that I'm always trying to grow. So I'm always, I follow podcasts like yours. I listen to audiobooks. So I think for me, it's always about growing. It's always about being a better version of me. I hope that process never ends until the day I die.
Well, it's interesting. Tony Robbins talks about this a lot. It's specifically for entrepreneurs, if we're not growing, then we kind of feel like we're dying. And it's really interesting where that has proven to be the case with me. If I'm not growing, if I'm moving backwards, there's nothing more miserable. But that growth process is what gets you excited to wake up every day. And I
will say, if you're listening to this podcast and you're dreaming about being an entrepreneur or want to be an entrepreneur and you're not, my first advice to you, my only advice to you is listen to Tony Robbins. Is it Personal Power? The 30-day program with Tony Robbins. For me, it was probably one of the most eye-awakening. I always thought like Tony Robbins, seemed like a weird thing, a self-help guru. I listened to that and was like, wow, this is, it's all about taking action, starting today. It's a great book or great audiobook. I really recommend that. But yeah, that's how I feel. I feel that, this is a short time we have on life on this planet. And I want to do, more. And that's what keeps me going.
Have you been to his Date with Destiny week yet?
I have not. It's on my bucket list here, and I hope to get it done this year. I've been looking at some of the ones. I was going to do I think June one, and I ended up unfortunately getting booked over that. But I definitely want to do it. Have you been?
Yeah, go. I went last year, and absolutely life changing. And you and I have lived this stuff for the vast majority of our adult lives, and the single most life changing event I've ever been to. And I don't say that lightly. Like, it really was a revolutionary 5 days. So absolutely go. You'll come out with a bigger vision than you can imagine, and I can't describe it. It was absolutely unbelievable, and I am so grateful that all of us out there who are live right now have the opportunity to learn from this gentleman and experience him while he's still working. So for everybody out there listening, if you haven't gone to see Tony, specifically Date with Destiny, just bite the bullet and go. You'll be glad that you did. So, Michael, this has been an amazing interview. I'm so thankful for the time and for your wisdom that you've shared today. Guys, go check out freshly.com. Sign up for some of the meals. This is a win-win for everybody. Not only do you get a great price for some of the highest quality food out there, but from a health perspective, that's just an investment that you can make on a daily basis, and you don't have to cook anymore, which is freaking awesome. So, Michael, thank you for your contribution to all of us and to the world and what you're doing to help keep people healthy. And I really appreciate it today.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it.